What's up, everybody? Coach CeeLo here, and welcome to the 36th episode of the No Bullshit Six Figure Sales Podcast. And today we have got a very, very special guest, a good friend of mine. This person was someone, just to put this in perspective here, who worked their way from church missions and being a bug boy, he'll explain what that is later, right, to a 6- and 7-figure earner, top producer in the timeshare industry, and later filling some of the top ranks in leadership, such as vice president of sales, director of sales, and senior director of sales. Let's welcome my good friend, Jeffrey Lewis.
Yeah, thank you.
How you doing, Jeff?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing great, man. I'm so glad you're here. You know, I'm really happy that you're here sharing this with us. I don't know if you know this. This is my second podcast, only my second out of 36 that I've done, where it's actually kind of like interview format where it's two of us talking. So I'm really excited to have you here. And I'll tell you what, man, why don't we just get right into it and tell us your story? Like, what were your beginnings and how did we get to here where we are now?
So beginnings?
Yeah.
Grew up in northern Nevada. I grew up on a farm and a ranch in northern Nevada. So most people meet me, they would never guess cowboy, farmer, that kind of thing. But here we are, you know, been in the industry now for years. I'm an old man in the industry now. So where I came from, like sales wise.
Yeah.
I guess really my first bit of sales was growing up as a kid. My grandfather had a carpet store. And so they needed help in the store, and they actually had me come in and sell some carpet for them. Not something that I really was good at, but I was free help, basically. They paid me a little bit of money, so that was good. I think my first hard sell was going on a church mission for a couple of years and knocking on doors, you know, trying to talk about religion is not the easiest sell in the world.
No, not at all. So you started knocking doors.
Yeah, for our mission. And it's one of those things where if you go that full time, you hope to, I guess you could say, convert a couple people. Mm-hmm. But that was the first time of really trying to convince somebody.
And it was probably your first time with some really hardcore rejection.
It was all rejection. it was all no, yes. Just a little yeses here and there, but it was almost all rejection. Yeah.
And that was somewhere else other than in Nevada, I'm assuming.
Yeah. It was kind of an interesting one for me because with the religion that I grew up in, they kind of chose where you got to go. So I actually ended up going to St. Louis, Missouri.
Okay.
Spent some of the time out in kind of the farm country out in Illinois, but I spent a lot of my time actually in North St. Louis. So one of the roughest neighborhoods out there, I spent a big chunk of my mission in.
Were you worried when you were doing it?
It was good. It was really good. It was an area I learned to really love. Probably one of my favorite parts about that mission was we got to work with an orphanage called the Faith Hope House. I don't know if it's still around, but it was a home for abandoned and abused children. So that was kind of a fun part.
Okay. So you start off working at your grandfather's place, right? Then you get into church missions. And what's the next evolution here?
Well, the next evolution was to go finish college and had to pay for college. And so there was a marketing company that signed people up from college to go knock doors once again, because that's what I was good at for my mission. And it was to go sell pest control door to door.
Oh, so wow.
We were back to knocking doors. This time we were killing bugs. So that was my first, I guess you could say, sales job where I was really out on my own and collecting money and going that way.
I got mad respect for you. I got to tell you, I cut my teeth in sales knocking on doors. All right. My father was a career salesman, and you know, I've been in sales my whole life. You know, part of my story. We did a lot of things, but I used to sell alarm systems with my dad. We'd go knocking on doors. Not just my dad. There was a whole crew of us, right?
Okay.
And we'd hit certain areas at a time. And I got a little creative afterwards, right? Because when you got a big group like that and everybody's attacking, you know, I learned so many lessons from knocking doors in terms of the rejection, in terms of closing ratio, in terms of going back. Talk to me a little bit about that. What's some of the lessons you might have learned from knocking on doors?
I would say the very biggest lesson I learned knocking on doors was really your nonverbal cues. You knocked on a door and you literally, if they opened the door, you had just seconds to grab their attention. And so one of the things that we used to talk about was, you know, building the emotion and to create a physical stimulus with them when they open the door. So one of the things you would do is you would talk about how you were just in the neighborhood, but you would always, you know, use your hands. And you would talk about how a bunch of the neighbors were seeing things like ants crawling up into the sides of people's homes. And the minute you would start to do that, you would literally watch people just twitch and
I felt it now when you did that, you know?
You know, and they're nesting in there. And so when you started to do that, I learned the power of what you can say with your face, what you can say with your hands, especially when you're not saying anything at all.
The power of suggestion.
Correct.
Amazing. Amazing. All right. So you're in college. You start now. What made you decide sales?
I mean, at that point, it was a way to pay for school.
Okay.
And so I didn't enjoy it. But because what I had done before, from a religion standpoint, that made it
easier.
Well, I mean, it was good money, you know,
right.
Nobody goes and knocks on doors because they like it. You do it because it was good money.
Right.
And then I did that. I got through school and I was like, okay, I'm never going to go into sales ever again.
Never, ever say never, ever.
Correct.
And how did you transition then from that to where we're at now?
So this is a part, I guess, of the story that actually you don't know. That for a short period of time, I actually worked for an orthotics and a prosthetic company. So that was a much easier sell when you're showing up to a hospital and you're, you know, somebody has lost a limb. It's, you know, a pretty easy thing. So I did a very short period of medical sales, went back into, I guess you could say, being a bug boy for one more summer.
And by the way, you made good money doing that, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Would you say your sales skills got proficient there? Was it good mentoring, or was it just tenacity?
It was a good way to learn like the hard grind.
Okay.
Because there was nobody watching you. So you literally could have just driven out and gone and enjoyed the day. But the only way you were going to make money is if you actually got into the neighborhoods and started knocking the doors.
You kill what you eat.
So you had to go out and do the work. And that's kind of where that kind of brings it back to growing up, you know, on a ranch or farm or lifestyle where you've got to have that work ethic. But I didn't enjoy it. I can tell you that. I hated the prospecting side of sales. I hated the part of knocking on the doors, but the money was good.
Okay. So then we get into prosthetics.
Yeah, that was real short. Like did it for a little bit of time. And then that's when I did one more summer, you know, selling bugs again, I guess you could say. And went out east this time. I worked in Virginia at that point. And then after that summer, one of my really good friends back then flew out to Virginia and we decided to do a cross-country trip and we were going to go drive back west.
That sounds like fun.
It was a lot of fun. You know, we drove up to Washington, D.C. I fell in love with D.C. We then went from there to New York City. He fell in love with New York City. And on our drive back, we both talked about how we wanted to move back east. We were really lucky to run into some good people. And so there were some friends that we ran into or we made on that trip that offered their place for me to come live at in DC until I could get settled.
Wow. So this was like almost spur of the moment, everything kind of aligning.
Yeah. We kind of just jumped up and did it.
Okay.
He went his way, I went my way. We both went to 2 different cities. We were both really excited, young, about the adventure in life at that point. And so DC, once again, like I said, I didn't want to go into sales again. And so I was actually interviewing to be a gopher boy, I guess you could say, at a law firm. And so I was interviewing for a job that paid about $35,000 a year. It came down to me and this other lady, and they literally put like these green cloths over our hands, and it was whoever could type the fast and type the most accurate basically got the job, and she beat me out. So I'd moved to DC. I was hoping that was my job. And the next thing you know, I was staying with some friends on their couch and looking for work.
And how did you get to our business?
That's right where we got to our business now. So one of the guys came home. He had this newspaper, and you know like the career builders or career finders.
Yes, I remember Career Builder. It used to be part of like the newspaper here, the local newspaper here in Miami, the Miami Herald, and then it kind of separated into its own thing. And once on the online thing and the internet thing became big, then it was like it was before Monster even. That used to be like the thing before Monster came around. Yeah.
Back in the day of newspapers.
Yeah.
So yeah, he came home. He had this newspaper. On the back page of it, it said, go into the vacation ownership industry. You could earn a 6-figure income. Mind you, I just got turned down for a $35,000 a year job. And so I was like, nobody earns a 6-figure income.
Wonk, 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 wonk.
Correct. And so they talked me into actually applying for it. They brought up the fact that I sold pest control before and that whole thing. And so I applied. I got a phone call to go interview. I went to the resort to interview, went into it, met with their recruiter. And their recruiter in the middle of the interview said to me, he's like, listen, this is not for you.
Ouch.
So he goes, sales is not for you. This is not for you. We do not have a job for you. Now, mind you, they normally tell you don't have the job once you leave. He told me before. While you were there. While I was there. Exactly. So, basically kicked me out, told me to leave. I went out to the lobby, sat on the couch to wait for my friends to come pick me up. And, really, this is kind of a stroke of luck. A gentleman walked into the lobby, saw me, started a conversation with me, asked what I was doing. I told him, well, I was actually here for an interview. Asked how that went. And I said, well, it didn't go well at all. I didn't get the job. And he was surprised with that. And he said, follow me. And I kind of was young enough and naive enough. I followed him. And so it brought me back into where the recruiter was, and we walked in the door, and he said to the recruiter, he goes, you're going to hire this guy.
So he was high up there.
Yes. He was over the entire project, over the Washington, D.C. area, just happened to come in, happened to talk to me. And that's where things got started there. So I went into their training class, and here's what was interesting about that. I went through training. I came out of training. And, gosh, I could tell you an interesting story. I don't think I've ever told you the story.
Oh, come on, lay it on me. Yeah, let's hear it.
Okay. This is my first deal. So I actually came out of training. Mm-hmm. And when I came out of training, I was really bad. Like, I lived up to the recruiter's expectations. I sold nothing. Like, I was really bad. And so I came out of training, and they put me on 10 tours. They were going to fire me, that if I didn't have a couple of deals within the next 10 tours, they were going to fire me.
Man, that's not much of a buffer.
No, I was at the end of my rope. And I still remember these clients' names. I won't use their names. But
Wait, let me interrupt you before you did. The training that they gave you back then at that time, do you feel sufficient? Was it good enough to give you a skill set to be able to make the sale?
Yeah, I mean,
because our industry is pretty good, right? By the way, if you guys don't know what I'm talking about, talk about timeshare, right?
Yeah, it was good training. Like they trained us well. I can't say anything bad about the training.
Okay.
I was really lucky back then to work with some amazing mentors. There were some amazing leaders. It was one of the best leadership groups ever assembled in the industry, and I happened to come into it. So I had some really good training. I just was not a great salesperson at that point. But what really turned the hat on that, I guess you could say, is they'd put me on these 10 tours. And I had this couple, they were from Indianapolis, Indiana. They came in, and we were always trained that when your closer sat down, right, that you always moved your chair next to the person of the same sex. So it became you and the clients versus the closer, if you would.
Right.
And so I did that, and I'm in the middle of my team leader. She's trying to close the deal. There's zero interest. And then all of a sudden on my leg, I feel a hand. And I look down, and the guy's grabbing my leg.
What?
I know this is a wild story. I have never told you this before. So I'm like, what the heck? And they said no to the offer. They said no to their offer. They said no to the offer. And my closer gets up, leaves the table, and I'm getting ready to get them signed out. And I'm actually walking away at this point. And walking away, and then I just turned around. I was like, screw that. If this guy's going to grab my leg, I am not going to let that go. So I walked back to the table, sat down. I'll use their first names. I go, Mark, you love your wife, right? He's like, well, yeah. I said, well, you're going to buy this today. And that became the first moment where I really just went in and took no for an answer. And she started to say, well, no, we're not going to buy this. I said, he's going to buy this for you. And then I looked at him, and he's like, right? And so that's how my first deal went down. And all of a sudden he said, yeah. He goes, yeah. Because I literally was like, vacations are important, correct? And he's like, yeah, I think so. And so that kind of took off my career from there. It was the jolt, or the jab, I guess you could say, that I needed.
So you got to taste a little blood in the water.
Yeah, it was funny because all of a sudden I got the credit card out. Remember, I'd never filled out a worksheet at this point, and I was awful. So I've got the credit card on the table. I'm like looking around,
fumbling all over the place.
I'm like looking around. The closer walks by. I'm like, I need you to come here. And she's like, what? And she comes over. She sits down, and she's completely confused at this point. She's sitting down. She's filling out the worksheet. She's going like, how did this go down? But it really just, I had to have the courage to ask for it and the conviction to go in and just tell them what to do, really tell them what to do. And so she fills this out. And then when it was all said and done, after they had left, she's like, what happened there? And then I told her the story. But it kind of, it was that moment where it gave me courage to ask, courage to not just present, but courage to really go close.
And what would you say if you had to think of a few moments, maybe like that one, that took you from that Jeff who thought he was a bad salesperson to someone now who you look back and has made multiple 6 and 7 figures in this industry, has trained other people to do the same thing, has mentored other people to do, like, what moments, what were the shifts that helped you get to where you're at right now?
I would say probably the biggest thing is to have the grit and have the stamina to never quit. It's such a mental game, and there's so many times where, even to this day, I quit a million times.
He runs businesses now. I just want you guys to understand that. Right.
Like I still quit, not as hard as I used to, before. When I would quit, I would literally not that I visibly
not literally
no,
quit.
I never went in there and was
brain.
like, hey, I quit. But every day you're like, oh man, I should be doing something else. But then you quit less, or you don't quit as hard. And then you build that stamina, you build that grit, you build that, like, that wall around you to where you can have that bad moment, but it doesn't go down that bad path where you think you're in the wrong job. I think there comes a point where I was just like, this is my career. Because before it was like, okay, this is a job until this happens. This is a job until this happens. And then I was like, okay, this is this is my career.
All right. So when did that moment, that spark happen? Because I can tell you, I remember when I got involved in timeshare, and like I said, I've been in sales my whole life, so I've done all kinds of stuff, but I never made the kind of money that I made in timeshare. And I'll never forget one time I was in front of this guy. His name's Stu. Stu, if you're out there, how you doing, brother? And I was green. I was brand new to timeshare. And he said, Chris, you ever make 25, 30 grand in a month? I said, come close, but... And he looked at me and he said, the minute that you make $25,000 to $30,000 on that 1 month, you'll never want to do anything again. And he was right. And it happened very soon afterwards. And I looked at him and I said, you're right. He's like, yeah, you're done.
Yeah, I remember my first year. Remember, I was in DC and I interviewed for a job for $35,000 a year. And then I made 104. So, and I remember it to the, it was $104,000. And I was like, wow, that's a lot of money. And then my goal became, how do I make 150? How do I make 2? And then once you start to get to that level, you just don't allow yourself to go back. So it was somewhere within the first couple years that I just was like, I guess this is it.
This is official now. This is my career.
Yeah.
I want you guys to know another thing, and I'm going to have you explain this to us, all right? Just to give you an idea, when Jeff and I met, we were working in the same company. Now, he had already been, he'd been a VP of sales in other places. He had been a director of sales other places, but he started brand new in this place as a sales rep. Remember that?
Correct.
And we met each other, and I'll let him tell a little bit of that story. But the story that I really wanted to kind of go down this path so you guys understand who this person is. After he already gets his sea legs, and there's a bit of that part of it to it, right? But after he already got his sea legs and he's already selling, all of a sudden I remember there's a month that he starts off. So in our business, people can rescind. They can ask for a refund, right? And they're given a certain amount of time to change their. He starts off the month and there was a bunch of rescinds happening from the month before. He starts off at negative 350. Was it negative 350?
It was a bad start.
It was like negative 350 or something like that. So imagine starting your month off. We always say that in sales, every month you start off at 0 again. He didn't begin at 0. He began at like negative $350,000, and he finished that month over $750,000 in sales. Just to put it in perspective here. You remember that?
I do. I know exactly what month you're talking about there. It was, so the month started, and I had an amazing start to that month. I had hit some monster transactions, some monster deals. It was going very well. People have a 10-day right to cancel their contracts. And so the first literally couple weeks of that month, I was rolling, and all within a 2-day period of time, everything that was done within the first 2 weeks came back.
Okay.
So I went from,
so it wasn't from the previous month. It was, you got started.
No, it was just that month.
Okay.
And so all of a sudden I went from clearly just leading the pack, everything else, to 0. And that messes with your head in a big way. Like my mental psyche was gone. I was toast. And what happened for me that was good was there was somebody that was working in that same company with us. And you're going to know who this is as soon as
I already know who you say it.
You're going to know who this is. So there was somebody that was working with us that actually had worked for me before as an employee. I had mentored. And this person started walking around the office talking about how they were going to beat me for the first time ever. I mean, they got very bragging and quite honestly, it was like the poke I needed. It got me out of feeling sorry for myself for just a minute he was like, I'm going to finish number 1. I'm going to do this. And then I was like, like hell you are.
And he was doing good.
He was doing really good. He had a really good
Shout
start.
out to you. You know who you are.
Yeah, he had a great start to the month. Yes.
Yeah.
And so I brought him in to my office. And I brought him in and I sat him down. I said, nobody closes out a month like I do. I said, so I might be at 0 now. And then I showed him a horse race, on where, just because you're the lead horse doesn't mean you're going to finish first. And you got to be careful when you're running from the front, because there's closers that are going to come down the stretch. And so I showed him this race, and at the very front of the race was a horse, and I basically nicknamed him that horse going forward. And then told him, you need to watch out because I'm going to come catch you. And then I literally had probably 2 of the best weeks of my entire career, and finished first that month. So
amazing.
Yes, he has still to this day not beat me, but I don't think I could have had that month without him.
And do you know that from that, not only did I learn a huge lesson watching you do that, like literally in real time, but during the course of my life, I have used that analogy, and especially the racehorse. You guys got to check out Zenyatta. Go on YouTube and check out Zenyatta. Zenyatta, Jeff is really big on horses. He knows his horses. And he taught me about that. And I still, to this day, look, I get goosebumps talking about it. To this day, I still watch Zenyatta, because Zenyatta always starts off
way in the back.
Way in the back. I mean, like last. And then all of a sudden, when Zenyatta feels like it's time to wake up,
she mowed him down.
That's it. It's over. And wins every single time. Most amazing racehorse that I know of. You may be able to mention a lot more because you actually, but I've actually incorporated that into many of the sales trainings that I've done in the past. Unfrickin' believable. All right. So let's talk about the impact and before that even, what's the most money you've ever made in this business?
The most money I've ever made in this business? Mm-hmm. I've done well. Not going to give a number.
All right.
But you look at the role that I'm in now.
Mm-hmm.
I've been able to help a lot of other people do well too.
Okay.
So that's, it's, sales in general. You listen to anybody out there. If you want to make money, it is the industry to be in. So, yeah.
So I'm just putting this in perspective for you guys. My audience is a mixed audience right now. So far, from what I've seen, we've got a lot of people from our industry, a lot of people in the car business, a lot of people that are high ticket closers. We were talking about high ticket closers before. I've done that, and I've trained people to do that. And obviously, when we're talking about our business on the remote end, that's basically high ticket closing as well, right? So what would you say, how did making that kind of money, how did it start impacting your life from how you lived to, where you're currently at now?
I mean, you make good choices. You make some bad choices along the way.
Sure.
You learn lessons. But you set yourself a standard. And then you start to live to that standard. But it's taught me a lot of lessons. I've made a lot of money. I've lost a lot of money.
You've blown a lot of money.
I've done it all. And then earned it again. But it's a stage in my life right now where it's not about the money that I make. It's really about the impact at this point too. So
amazing. Here's another good question. Of what you're willing to share, right? What's the craziest story or the craziest thing you've seen happen? Could be in this business or in sales in general.
Oh, the craziest thing?
Yeah.
Oh, there's a lot of crazy things. I don't know if they're good for camera.
That's why I say whichever one you feel like. Look, everybody knows our business is a crazy business, right? So there's a lot of things, but just whichever one, anyone, I don't know, pick one.
There was a company that I worked for at one point. This is also, you have these moments in your life and you have these moments in your career, and you have moments that are chapters that are really good, and you have moments that are really bad. And then you have moments that are just memories that teach you lessons. And I think one of them was the company that I'd worked for at the time. They had this drug bust that took place on it was on one of their sales galleries.
Hello.
And they ended up having to drug test a bunch of people. And they reached out to me to ask me to come down and to move from Washington, D.C. to Orlando to help fix some of the things that had gone on there. And so I had a team that I was supposed to inherit that had about 25 people on it. And my first day there, I was down to 6.
From 25.
Yeah. There was a bunch of them that had either quit or failed or moved on. And so I walked in that day and we had over 200 clients that we were supposed to do presentations to. And all of a sudden we had 6 sales representatives to do it. And so
I feel the power of a podium presentation coming on.
It was. We actually we were doing these packages that were trial packages to get them to come back and upgrade out of. And the only way to do it was we literally did just shove everybody into a room, and we went over it and said, "This is what we're offering. Whoever's interested, raise your hand. Whoever's not, we're going to take you to gifting." And so we did that for the first few days. And there was a good lesson that came out of this too. But my very first day doing that, which I'll never forget, was I got called up to come down and take this job, and it was April Fool's. And so I was like, the joke is on me.
Surprise.
So yeah, I took this job, and then within that first week, the number one representative for the company had tried to make all these demands to build the team around him, to give him certain opportunities. We didn't see eye to eye. And so it just wasn't the right fit for where we were going to build it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wasn't willing to meet his demands. And then he and I in the company parted the next week. So we went from 6 down to 5. And then we started hiring and building from then. But that was probably one of the craziest things, is just that big of a departure and a fresh start. But it was one of the greatest things to be able to build from the ground up. It started a whole new chapter in my life with some people that are really good friends of mine to this day.
Wow.
So it was a neat new chapter.
Okay. So I guess where did wanting to get into leadership and wanting to get into, higher areas of the business kind of happen? How did that? So you started sales. At first, you weren't any good. None of us are usually, right? So we suck in the beginning. Then all of a sudden, you start getting really good. You start making money, blow some money, don't blow some money. You got a rhythm going. What made you want to get into leadership?
So I wanted to get out of leadership. That's when I met you.
No. But before that, getting into leadership.
Before that, it's just one of those things that kind of starts to happen, that you do well. They offer you positions. They want you to lead. And so it was one of those things where it's just kind of a push and a pull, and you get into it, and then you have different positions, different promotions. And that is what led me to where I was right before I met you. But then when I jumped out of leadership, I really was looking for freedom. I was looking for a balanced life. And so I was willing to step away from all of that. And really with the intention of never doing it again. And really purposely building the perfect life with purpose is what I wanted to do when I was there in New York City with you.
Which you did. Which you were killing it.
It was amazing. And by the way, I sucked there at first too, if you remember. So we can come back to that later. But yeah, I really didn't have intention to get into leadership again. And then COVID happened. New York City shut down. And, the right offer came to get back into leadership again. It was here in Florida. And
Hold on. I want you to tell them the story of how you got interviewed for that job, and also kind of what you did in COVID to survive, because obviously if there's a lockdown, can't do face-to-face presentations. So what happened there?
yeah, I think I know what story you're looking for right here. Wow. So COVID was an interesting thing, living up in New York City. We had a 2-bedroom apartment or a 2-bedroom condo. And all of a sudden, there's not much room when you're literally locked down. And overnight, they're like, okay, we're going to send you computers and you're going to start doing presentations virtually. And I did not know how to do a virtual presentation. I didn't know. None of us did. We didn't know what Teams was. We didn't know how to connect face-to-face over this. So it all became something really new to learn. And so I got this computer sent to my house, originally set up my office in the 2nd bedroom, and then it just wasn't enough space to do everything we needed to do in the house. And so we took that 2nd bedroom and converted it to a gym. And we took it turned into a gym. So we had a gym to work out because we couldn't even work out at the gym in the building. I mean, COVID had shut down everything. And so we took the guest bathroom and I turned that into my studio, which was not very big because the toilet was right here, right? We took the sink top right here.
Picture what he's saying, guys.
We took the sink top and I put a piece of wood over the sink so it became an elevated top. And then I bought this really skinny little desk that was like this thick, just enough for a laptop. And then my chair was right behind it. And turned this bathroom into literally a studio. And I can tell you this, to this day, I think I'm the only person that has sold $1 million worth of product out of a bathroom. So sold all this out of the bathroom. And it was kind of really cool though, because when people were messing around with these fake backgrounds and things like that, what I did is I ordered a bunch of shower curtains. And so instead of having fake backgrounds, I had these shower curtains behind me that looked like almost like wallpaper, or just like I had them so flat and so perfect that it was my backdrop. And so I had really good backdrops. I learned a lot about lighting during that time. So I had to evolve. So I got great lighting, had great backdrops. Nobody knew I was in a bathroom.
You took this serious.
I did. But yeah, nobody knew I was in a bathroom. So the job that I'm in now, and I know this is what you're asking, kind of how I ended up in the job that I'm in now. I actually interviewed from my bathroom for the job that I'm in now. So I did the interview. I had my backgrounds. I had my lighting. And truly, I think that gave me a leg up from the other people that were interviewing at that time too, just because of, how it looked, everything else, how I was able to present myself. It was really good.
Wow. So there's a theme here in some of the things that we were talking about earlier, like when you first started, like when you started with your granddad, like when you went with the church mission, like when you started selling, where you didn't consider yourself, it's not that you didn't consider yourself, at that point you sucked, right?
Yeah.
But you never gave up. You kept going and you kept going. And even when after you were, at like the pinnacle of leadership in these companies, and you decided, because you wanted more freedom, you decided to start as a rep all over again, right? You hadn't sold in how long? I mean, I'm sure you were involved.
I'd been involved, but actually been a sales representative. It had been 3 or 4 years.
3 or 4 years. So you start off as a sales rep, and it takes you a little while. Tell us about that part.
Yeah, that got really in my head there again, because all of a sudden I came in as a sales rep and there were all these expectations of how I was going to perform and who I am. And once again, that first month, I couldn't give it away. Like nothing was going on. And people were like, well, we heard he was this good, or we heard this. And then in my head, I'm like, maybe, people go into leadership and they forget how to sell. Maybe I'm one of those. And so, you have those little gremlins that come in your head and they nest there and you got to knock them out sometimes. But, I after about a month, I had one good week. And so I thought I was a rock star. And then the next month I went, one for the entire month, only one deal in the entire month.
Ouch.
And then the very next month after that, I set the all-time site record for that location. And ended up with an amazing first quarter, for this career. I joke about this, it took me 3 companies, to finally win Rookie of the Year. I finished second in my first 2 companies. So it took me 17 years and 3 times to win that. But it took some time to settle in. But once I settled in, I was able to do it. But it's once again, yes, it's that staying power. It's that grit. It's that tenacity.
And you went to work because your office was right in front of my office. And while everybody else was goofing off and doing whatever else they were doing, waiting for them to get the next presentation, I'd be in there studying. And when I'd look across, you were right there, man, going nuts. I mean, you literally took the whole thing apart and
Right.
put it back together. And to be quite honest, to this day, I still don't know someone who knows the product as well as you do.
Thank you. Yeah, you've got to have conviction with what you're selling. Like that's probably one of the most important things and so for me, conviction is knowing the ins and outs and knowing it better than anybody else and knowing that I can sit down in front of anybody and know that I'm going to be able to give real value, real benefits, and be able to provide that in a way that nobody else can do. And that takes work. That takes a lot of work. So yeah, during those first, and not even first 3 months, I would say that first year, it was always about dissecting it. And then even to this day, I spend the time that it takes to study the product, to study the evolution, to study what's happening. It is my goal to always know more than anybody else. It doesn't mean I'm going to share everything I know because that's the last thing you want to do with a client, but to know what's out there so you can use those tools whenever you want.
Quick little side note here. So obviously in our business, in the business of sales, there's a hell of a lot of rejection, right? And so you've got to have a really, really good mindset. What kind of routine or what kind of things do you do to keep yourself level-headed?
I break it down to a lot of little games. And I don't know if I've ever showed you this, but I looked at a year as a baseball season. I looked at it like there was 52 games in a year. And I'm not going to win most of them. I'm not going to win a lot of them, but can I win most of them? Can I win 30 of those 52 weeks? Can I be 30 and 22 at the end of the year? Can I be, 40 and 12 or whatever it happens to be? So I would break down my entire year by a week. And that way it was a fresh week every week, a fresh week to restart. So for me, it was a lot of games of how do I win? People hear about winning the day. So how do you win the moment? How do you win the day? How do you win the week? That was important to me. So that's
Okay.
part of how I would break it down.
Any special books that played an important role for you or that you liked or that you might refer to once in a while?
Yeah, there's a couple of them. 7 Habits of Highly Effective People with Stephen R. Covey. One of my favorite things in there is one of the habits of seek first to understand and then to be understood. I'm somebody that my ADD goes a million miles an hour, right? It goes everywhere, right? And so knowing that I need to consciously sit back and listen more than I talk, listen to the client, and ask questions that are going to force me to listen is super important. There's another book called Raving Fans, which talks about giving the irresistible offer. Making your offer so irresistible that somebody can't say no. And so that really drove me into when I get ready to position for the close, how have I positioned that offer to make it irresistible, to make it urgent, to make it to where somebody understands will always take their business, but it's more important to take it today.
Sweet. So my audience is typically either high-performing salespeople or people that are in the process of becoming high-performance salespeople, or even people that are high-performance salespeople but haven't quite found the consistency yet, somewhere in that range, right? So you've got these guys and gals who consider themselves professionals and are working on becoming professionals. As a person who has had multiple leadership roles in the sales industry, much like when you found that one person who saw in you things that you maybe at that point didn't even see, right? What do you look for when trying to hire people in these positions that are obviously six-figure positions?
You can have the most talented person in the world, and they're not necessarily the right fit. And so when you're looking to hire somebody, you've got to look for somebody that is going to be the right fit for you. If you look at some of the people that I work with, they're so different than me. But those differences, their strengths fill in my weaknesses. And I look at some of the people that I work with, right now, they're really some of the most talented, some of the best people. Some of the relationships grew really quick. Some of them took time. One of them in particular took time, and it was a struggle for both of us at first. But it's really one of the best relationships out there now. And I've really learned to lean into her talents, and she's really learned to lean into mine. So it's got to be the right fit. And there's a gut feeling to it too of how, and you're going to get a lot wrong. You're going to get a lot wrong. You're going to get some right. The ones you do get right, you hold on to. But a lot of times you get things wrong more than you get them right. But the ones you get right, you got to hold on to, and you got to be thankful for. And, I've worked with some of the best leaders that I've been lucky enough to work with directly above me. And so I've been literally almost every single one of them I couldn't be more thankful for.
I'm glad you said that. Mentorship,
Yes.
right? Very important. So it sounds like you've had a few mentors in your life that really impacted you. And do you think that it helped speed along the learning curve, or like what impact do you think mentorship has had in your life?
I mean, it's everything. You've got to be coached, and everybody needs to be coached. Everybody needs a mentor. Like your best athletes have coaches. That's why they have coaches. And the minute you think you know it all, you're in trouble. You're in a lot of trouble. So a great mentor is also not, yes, they're a great friend, but they're a great partner. They're willing to challenge you. They're willing to push you. And I've had some incredible mentors in my life, really, really good mentors, and really wouldn't have accomplished what I have today without them. I look at when I first started in this industry, I was lucky enough, like I said at the beginning, I was really bad, but I was surrounded by just such great talent. And if you look at the talent that came from that property at that time, they ended up becoming some of the greatest leaders in our industry today. So you see these pockets where there's massive production and massive leadership that comes from certain areas. And it usually comes from the mentorship, the coaching, and the leaders. And then you have these moments in time that you just grab onto those people. So yeah, I get to work with a great team today. I've got great mentors today that I'm so thankful for. But yeah, coaching's important.
That's amazing. So this is like my closing question. I think I'm going to use this every single time with every single person because I think it's really important. And plus, it's more for them actually than for us, right? So you run into your 20-year-old self, or you've got a son or a daughter or a nephew or someone that you love. They're good at sales. not quite there yet, but good, right? What advice would you give them?
Don't spend all your money. Number one. But always be hungry. Always be hungry for knowledge. Always be hungry to be taught. Don't think you know it all. Be hungry. Be hungry, and you don't give up. Like learn. You know, you look back at one of the side effects of when I worked out of my bathroom, right? Something that was really cool was my computer monitor was here, but my mirror was right behind me. And it became one of the great teaching lessons because while I was talking to guests, I actually could see my face in the mirror. I could see the nonverbal communication, and it was such a great learning experience. So yes, if I could go back to my 20-year-old self, be hungry, be smart, save more money than you spend. That would be the advice that I would give that person.
Thanks so much, Jeff. Guys, my name is Coach CeeLo, and I have helped thousands of salespeople reach, break through, attain, and maintain six figures. You keep watching this, you'll be the next.